Okay, hello everyone. Today we're going to briefly talk about week 4's access sheet, and it's pretty light, so I'm going to quickly talk about some interesting problems as always and some tips I have, and then we will move on to the Q&A session very quickly. Okay. Yes, so today's topic will be the well-formedness of XML and JSON. And I will skip the installation of Oxygen. I assume all of you have installed it. It's a pretty useful tool. I will also demonstrate how to use it. And I will first talk about XML. So I have added some screenshots for from the slides, which I find quite useful to be familiar with for the exams. For example, the escape characters and when to escape them, and the naming, and this is pretty similar to the naming in programming languages, and the four formats that are deemed to be well-formed. So I think I've got asked many times by emails like the differences and the namespaces in XML. So I think it's more intuitive to think of it to make an analogy, for example, in Python and other programming languages. Right? So hopefully you can see it. So for namespace, for example, we have the concept of prefix, we have the namespace and the local name. Together they call the Q name or qualified name. So in Python, this would be, for example, we import math as m, and math would be the namespace, right? M would be the prefix or the nickname of that namespace, right? And then we call a function called m.log2. Then the log2 would be the local name, right? Because the name is local to the module itself. And then together they call the Q name. This name is qualified by the namespace, the nickname, the prefix of the namespace together with the tag or the elements of that module, okay? And this is the same in C++, right? This is just for simplifying the notation, why we have multiple namespaces for var bars, and then we have a value nested within the inner namespace. Then we can simply make an alias or a nickname for everything, right? For FBZ, and this represents the whole nested namespace. Then we can get the value directly. So in this case, what would be the local name in this C++ example? Exactly. So the value would be the local name. In XML, that would be the tag. So the elements you are going to use. And together FBZ would be the qualified name together with the value. Okay, just an analogy, and I think this would clear things up a bit, right? For example, in this case, we have multiple namespaces, right, and each of which has indicated with an element we are using. So 4 is an empty element within the namespace of B, right? So just to clarify which 4 we are talking about, right? We also have a 4, but this is under the namespace of D. Very simple. Questions? Please.
XML, they don't, like if you nest elements with different namespaces, the inner one doesn't have the concatenation of the namespaces, just different namespaces mixed up.
Yes, you are right. Yeah. Thanks for the clarification. Yeah, that's a great point. Okay. Right. So I think those examples are pretty easy for you guys. I will just go through quickly the first example and show you how you can use Oxygen So for the first example, I would say, so in the exam, you will always have access to the notebook. So what you do, you just, I would recommend specifying the type of the code snippet you are writing, right? So if you have a XML, then you have the syntax highlighting, right? So this would be much easier to see. So if you highlight this example, you would see approximately which where is going wrong, and you can try to fix it. But this doesn't solve everything. So for like naming and namespaces, this doesn't give you a hint. But typically for like obvious syntax, you can check with this tip. So you just specify the type of code snippet. For practice reasons, I would suggest, so first, eyeballing the arrows, right? And then fix it and copy paste your solution. This is a bit small. To Oxygen. And it will give you very detailed hints as to where it's going wrong, and you can see the arrows very clearly. One thing is that, so currently we haven't covered schema, right? Or not? We just started. So yeah, so typically I think if you don't specify the schema that validates the XML document, it will throw an error. What you can do is that you can just go to a website to create an automatic schema for your XML and put it here. You can specify, associate this XML document with, let me quickly find it, something somewhere here. Okay, schema, and you can associate a schema for that XML, and you can get rid of that error very quickly. But this can be automatically generated by some online tools or ChatGPT. Give it a try as well. So after associating that schema, you can pretty much check the well-formedness with Oxygen, and this will tell you, okay, it's validated. All right, and pretty simple stuff. You can put 2 dashes within the comments, and always use the normal quotes, right? Don't use the word style quotes. No duplicated tags. One thing I'd like to highlight here is that, so the greater sign, the greater than symbol can be escaped or can be not escaped. So it's optional. So the starting sign is mandatory, but this one is optional. So if you say, I don't want to escape this part, you can still keep it there, and this is still well-formed, as you can see. But a good practice is that you skip both, right? And you specify the type of code snippet I've mentioned. Other things I think should be clear. Yes, and you should always avoid using anything related to XML in your naming. XML, prefix, XML, suffix, no. Okay. For all kinds of cases, capital letters, small letters, mixed camel cases, no. Okay. I think that's the same for the second. I would highly recommend checking it out yourself. It's pretty much the same. Right. Any questions? It should be trivial, right? Right. Pretty defined entities. Yeah, this is the same. Just to remember, there are only two things, two entities that are mandatory to escape. One is the less than or equal symbol and the quotation mark. Sorry, the amp. This one. And for JSON, one thing I'd like to highlight here is that so the formatness, the well-formedness of JSON, of a JSON document is totally different from what Python or other JavaScript is deemed to be valid, right? So in JSON, you can use anything that's hashable, meaning that you can use a string, numerical values, or not, as the key. But for the JSON document, you can only use string. So everything is a string, and you need to quote it with double quotes. Okay, no single quotes allowed. Yes, I think this part should be also easy, and there is a format called JSON line, and this should not be allowed either. So everything is so the outer side has to be this curly brackets, because everything has to be JSON object, and you can have a nested element like this. Question?
Would it also be an array as the outer element?
Uh,
I tried with like an online well-formedness checker, and like just putting an array that contains, I don't know, like numbers or whatever strings. That seems to be well-formed, but I don't know, would that also work for different kinds of, or is that maybe just a mistake of the online checker that might also be?
Right. I wouldn't say that's a mistake. I think that's idiosyncrasy of this course. So in this course, that format is not allowed. Yeah. But typically, yeah, that's basically a collection of JSON objects, and you can use JSON library to load and to dump, pretty easily. So, but it's not well formed in this course. So, yeah. Thanks for the question. Right. That's pretty simple. I think from next week on, you will be introduced with the schema for both XML and JSON. That will be lots of fun. But we'll also have, you guys will have lots of headaches validating them on your own without those checkers in the exam. But yeah, that's the tricky part, I have to say. And another part is converting a table to JSON and XML formats. I don't think this part has any problems. Does it? No, okay, great. So basically you just convert the columns to object keys, and you can also nest them as well. Yeah, in the exam, they will specify which fields should be nested together to be a single JSON object, and which ones should be flattened just as the key value pairs. Okay. Yes, let's quickly move on to other parts. More XML, the namespaces, they should be clear. Yeah, I think there are something I'd like to mention. Yeah, one thing I think confused me a lot when I was studying this part was the default namespace. Hi. So the default namespace is different for tag and attributes. So for tags, so let me check. So for this tag and ID, these two attributes have no namespaces associated, right? This is because tag doesn't automatically fall into the default namespace, attributes, but tag does. So if one tag, so SVG, this is not specified with any specific namespace, and this will fall into the default namespace. But for the attributes, they don't. So in the exam, they will ask you, which namespace does belong to? Then you should say no namespace instead of default namespace. That's the only thing I'd like to highlight. Other things should be clear. And you should always declare all the namespaces in one place. I think so although this is well-formed, I think, right, you still are recommended to put everything together, right? Just like declaring the preamble of any programming languages, you put all the namespace declarations ahead of time. That's that makes things clearer. Pretty easy, right? Okay. Lastly, let me quickly check if there are anything else. Yeah, so typically JSON and XML can be converted back and forth without any problems because they can be used to specify non-relational data models. But for CSV, it's not the case. Yeah, I think you will see in the mock exam some interesting problems associated with CSV. But in this case, what they are trying to demonstrate in the 7th problem is that when you have these missing values, pivot tables, so this format is pivoting, right? You are pivoting this table. The pivot table is not very ideal because you have lots of empty values. What you can do is you can unpivot the table, right? In pandas, it would be melt, right? So I'm giving an example in this case. So you can think of the transformation between CSV and like pivoting and unpivoting in pandas, right? We have a table like this, and we have a data form, and what melt does is that it specifies a set of variables that don't change, right? In this case, the identical variables would be ID, so we don't change ID, we fix ID. What we do is that we melt other variables. So we melt name and roles into the columns as the attributes, right? This is pretty much the same as the example given above. But in this case, we avoid those empty cells. And this is especially useful when you are plotting some data, and you can specify which column is the axes and which column is the values, right? And then you can unpivot this table to the original value as well, right? So yeah, that's some tips on my side, but that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. And this week we don't have a JSONic exercise sheets either, I think. So yeah. And next week we'll cover the white column stores, right? And that's a very theoretical chapter, and lots of questions will come from there as well. So I would highly recommend checking it out and go through that notebook more heavily. Yeah. That's it, guys. We've got more than an hour back, and I'd like to answer any questions. I will stick around, and yeah, thanks a lot.